Anattapindika Vagga, translated by Bhikkhu Sujato. With Chandimasa. At Savatthi. Then, late at night, the glorious god Chandimasa, lighting up the entire Jeta's grove, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. Like deer in a mosquito-free marsh, they will reach a safe place, having entered the absorptions, unified, alert, and mindful. Like fish when the net is cut, they will reach the far shore, having entered the absorptions, diligent, with vices discarded. With Vishnu. Standing to one side, the god Vishnu recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. Happy are the children of Manu who pay homage to the Holy One. They apply themselves to Gautama's instructions, diligently training. Those who practice absorption in accord with the training, said the Buddha to Vishnu, in the way of teaching I've proclaimed, they're in time to be diligent. They won't fall under the sway of death. With Dikhalatti. So I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrels' feeding ground. Then, late at night, the glorious god Dikhalatti, lighting up the entire bamboo grove, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. Suppose a mendicant is a meditator, freed in mind. If they want to reach the heart's peace, having known the arising and passing of the world, healthy-minded, independent, that is their reward. With Nandana. Standing to one side, the god Nandana addressed the Buddha in verse. I ask you, Gautama, whose wisdom is vast, the Blessed One of unhindered knowledge and vision, what kind of person do they call ethical? What kind of person do they call wise? What kind of person lives on after transcending suffering? What kind of person is worshipped by the deities? A person who is ethical, wise, self-developed, becomes immersed in samadhi, loving absorption, mindful, who's got rid of and given up all sorrows, with defilements ended, they bear their final body. That's the kind of person they call ethical. That's the kind of person they call wise. That kind of person lives on after transcending suffering. That kind of person is worshipped by the deities. With Chandana. Standing to one side, the god Chandana addressed the Buddha in verse. Who here crosses the flood, tireless all day and night? Who, not standing and unsupported, does not sink in the deep? Someone who is always endowed with ethics, wise and serene, energetic and resolute, crosses the flood so hard to cross. Someone who desists from sensual perception has moved past the fetter of form and has finished with relishing and greed, does not sink in the deep. With Vasudatta. Standing to one side, the god Vasudatta recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. Like they're struck by a sword, like their head was on fire, a mendicant should go forth mindfully to give up sensual desire. Like they're struck by a sword, like their head was on fire, a mendicant should go forth mindfully to give up identity view. With Subrahma. Standing to one side, the god Subrahma addressed the Buddha in verse. This mind is always anxious. This mind is always stressed about stresses that haven't arisen and those that have. If there is a state free of anxiety, please answer my question. Not without understanding and austerity, not without restraining the sense faculties, not without letting go of everything, do I see safety for living creatures. That is what the Buddha said. The God vanished right there. With Kakudha. So I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying near SAGÂTHÀ in the deer park at the Anjana wood. Then late at night the glorious god Kakudha, lighting up the entire Anjana wood, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side and said to him, "Do you delight, ascetic?" "What have I gained, sir?" "Well then, ascetic, do you sorrow?" "What have I lost, sir?" "Well then, ascetic, do you neither delight nor sorrow?" "Yes, sir." "I hope you're untroubled, mendicant. I hope that delight isn't found in you. I hope that discontent doesn't overwhelm you as you sit alone." "I'm genuinely untroubled, spirit, and no delight is found in me, and also discontent doesn't overwhelm me as I sit alone." "How are you untroubled, mendicant? How is delight not found in you? How does discontent not overwhelm you as you sit alone?" "Delight is born from misery. Misery is born from delight. Sir, you should know me as a mendicant free of delight and misery. After a long time I see a Brahmin extinguished, a mendicant free of delight and misery. He has crossed over clinging to the world." With Uttara. At Rajagaha. Standing to one side, the god Uttara recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. "This life, so very short, is led onward. There's no shelter for one led on by old age. Seeing this peril in death, do good deeds that bring happiness. This life, so very short, is led onward. There's no shelter for one led on by old age. Seeing this peril in death, a seeker of peace would drop the world's bait." With Anathapindika. Standing to one side, the god Anathapindika recited these verses in the Buddha's presence. "This is indeed that Jeta's grove, frequented by the Sangha of hermits, where the king of Dhamma stayed. It brings me joy. Deeds, knowledge and principle, ethical conduct, an excellent livelihood, by these are mortals purified, not by clan or wealth. That's why an astute person, seeing what's good for themselves, would examine the teaching rationally, and thus be purified in it. Sariputta has true wisdom, ethics, and also peace. Any mendicant who has gone beyond can at best equal him." This is what the god Anathapindika said. Then he bowed and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right side before vanishing right there. Then, when the night had passed, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. "Mendicants, tonight a certain glorious god, lighting up the entire Jeta's grove, came to me, bowed, stood to one side, and recited these verses in my presence." The Buddha then repeated the verses in full. When he said this, Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "Sir, that god must surely have been Anathapindika, for the householder Anathapindika was devoted to Venerable Sariputta." Good, good, Ananda. You've reached the logical conclusion as far as logic goes, for that was indeed the god Anathapindika.